If you've ever had any formal training in video editing, then you will almost certainly have learned about three-point edits, reverse three-point edits, and four-point edits. And I want to show you another way. But before I do, just to clarify what that means, because a lot of people know three-point editing, they just don't know that's what it's called. Let me show you what I mean. Here's my playhead on the timeline, and I'm going to use that as the in mark for my sequence. If I have an in mark, it'll override it. Here in my source monitor, I'm going to add an in and an out. I'm using the keyboard shortcuts I and O. And now, rather than dragging and dropping, I can use the keyboard or the buttons here, and I'm going to insert, and now I've made a three-point edit. So 2 points in the source, 1 point on the timeline. If I remove the out mark in the source, I'm right-clicking and I'm choosing clear out, and on the timeline I put an in and an out. Let's make that a little bit shorter. Now I'm all set up to create a reverse three-point edit. So a reverse three-point edit simply means the duration is defined by the timeline, not by the source. So here we go. Now I've made a reverse three-point edit. That's very much how editing works, and you can use in and out marks on the timeline to lift and extract as well. I'm just going to lasso these to select them and hit the delete key. But you can also use copy, cut, and paste. Now, if you use in and out marks, you are making a temporal selection based on your tracks. Here I've got tracks off and on, and I can move around my media by marking an in, marking an out, and now I can extract, and I've removed part of my content. Let me just undo to bring that back in. Now, the keyboard shortcuts are a little bit different. Most keyboard shortcuts are exactly the same on Mac and PC versions of Premiere Pro, but this is one of the very small number of exceptions. On Mac OS, you can remove your marks with Alt-X. This is a classic FCP keyboard shortcut as well. On Windows, it's Shift-Control-X. There we go. Now, of course, you can change the keyboard shortcuts any way you like, and I don't know why that difference exists, but there you go. It's one of the small differences between the two versions of the application. Some keyboard shortcuts that are the same are copy, cut, and paste. So that's Control, C, X, and V, or Command, C, X, or V. And you make the process work simply by selecting clip segments. So rather than choosing a bit of time, you're going to just choose whole pieces of video. Now I'm going to zoom in a little bit on the timeline just to illustrate this. I'm just going to scrub over a little. So I want to take this shot and I want to put it in at the beginning of this shot. So what I'm going to do is select the clip. I'm going to press Control X, and you can see that's left a gap. And now I'm going to scrub over. Now I want my playhead to snap into the gap, and I can do this by pressing the up arrow with my keyboard. Up and down will jump between cuts. You can also force snapping to apply to the playhead in Premiere Pro by holding down the Shift key. It's one of those little modifier key shortcuts a lot of people never learn. So there we go. I'm using the Shift key to snap in. Now, if I press Control or Command V, you'll see I've now overwritten that piece of content over the shot that was already there. Now I'm going to undo, Control Z, Command Z. Now I'm going to hold down the Shift key. And this really makes sense for me because the Shift key is all about shifting. So Shift, Control V, or Shift, Command V, and now I've insert pasted that clip segment. So again, I'm just going to undo a couple of times. Here's my media. This workflow doesn't just work for individual clip segments. I can select a whole range of clip segments. So if I've got a scene that I want to move to another part of my sequence, I can now press Control or Command X, and then I'm going to shift drag. And I tend to shift drag to do this rather than using the up and down arrows. I suppose because my right hand's on the mouse, my left hand's on the left edge of the keyboard. It's just easier than reaching across to the arrow keys. But now I'm going to Shift Control, Shift Command V, insert, and I've now moved that whole section of my timeline. Now I'm going to undo again and again. And now I just mentioned something else. If you do have a gap in the timeline, I'm just going to make one here. You can select the gap and hit backspace, and Premiere Pro will remove it. Let me just undo a couple of times again. Now let's say I want this shot to move up onto the video 2 track, which is something I might need to do. So just to illustrate this, I'm going to Control or Command X to cut this, and when you cut, it goes into the clipboard for your machine. If I paste, it's going to go onto the lowest enabled track number, if you like. Right now, I've got video 1 and audio 1 turned on, so that's exactly where the content will go if I paste. But if I want to, I can turn these off. And now, if I paste, and I'm not going to shift paste, I'm just going to paste, you can see I've added this as a separate layer. So the lowest enabled track is the one that receives the content. So again, I'm going to undo and undo because I'm pretty happy with the layout of my media. So I just wanted to show you those keyboard shortcuts work because, there's many paths up the mountain. There's many ways of driving across a city. There are many ways of editing a movie. And whichever works for you from one moment to the next is the right choice. You don't have to adhere to one particular workflow.